shin.
All right, cool. Okay. All right. I'm here. Welcome to our staff study on September. Staff study with Abby, very first one. All right, so we're going to be talking about the new level 1 and level 2 evals today. We'll start with level 1. So we'll start at the top. The one thing that I feel is really important for level 1 is control, because I have a lot of level 1s who either obviously in their handstand they go all the way over, or even when they're jumping on the tumble track and they have to do just a normal straight jump, they're jumping so high that their legs, they feel they need to bend their legs to land. So that's a really important one because they can't do many other things if they don't know and learn how to control their body. Level 1 is really important because it sets the foundation essentially for every skill. So level 1 is something to be really not strict, but more like of a stickler on, because you're basically setting the base for these higher skills, and if they don't have a good cartwheel, handstand, pullover, then everything else that they're going to do is going to have bent legs, or they're going to switch their feet on literally everything. So
are we allowed to add commentary while you talk?
Absolutely.
Okay. Can I say something?
Yes.
Yeah, I think personally that I find with like level 1 and like level 1 to transition into level 2, like I feel like in order to go from level 1 to level 2, like this is the level they should have everything mastered before they go to the next level, because like if like Abby said, if they have a cartwheel with straight legs, it's going to transition into back bend kickovers, like round offs. They can't do any of that stuff. So like if you just make sure that every single thing is mastered, even if they're like in level 2 for a year, like that's the foundation. You know what I'm saying?
It's just like bare minimum at that point.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like they need, and if they want to be any sort of gymnast, they need to know how to do every single one of these things. And also, I think I told you this the other day. Yesterday when we were talking about it. I have been doing this new thing where I'll ask my kids, like, okay, do a front support on the bar, and if they're like, what's a front support? Even if they can do it, they don't get it mastered, because if they don't know what the name of the skill is, that's just as important as being able to do the skill. Because I get so irritated when I'm like, do a back bend, and they're like,
what's that?
And like, I just showed you what a back bend was. Like, you know what I'm saying? So like, I think that's super important.
I think that's important. Knowing terminology is a huge thing, because then, you know, what if they get so good they go over to team and, you know, they won't deal for that.
Yeah.
Like, no. Yes, so that's a good one. So make sure they know terminology as well, so you're not just saying, okay, do this. So go over terminology every week, because it is also very important.
I literally, when I coach, like especially level 1, I literally say the same things every single week. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you can totally contest to me for this, because you hear me on bars when I say when I do glide swings, I'm like, where's your butt? Here. Where are you looking? Here. Are your ears covered?
That's good though, because then they'll actually remember.
Yeah, and then I'll like ask them, like, okay, what are you supposed to be looking at? And they answer. You know what I'm saying? And that way, like, it's
consistency is key.
Yes.
Absolutely. A new thing that I added for level 1 is the correct board entry. Yes, thank you. All right, as everybody knows, one bounce. Do not let them touch anything between the blue and the X. 2 feet together, not 1 foot at a time, okay? Because I know that's a big one, obviously. How can they do a handstand fall flat or handstand front limber in level 1 or 2, or even a forward roll if they don't do a board entry correct, you know? So that's a big one. They're just doing squat-ons instead of worrying about forward rolls onto the resi for right now, because then it's more important to do handstand fall flats in level 3 versus level 2. Split jump, straddle jump, tuck jump, seat drop, half turn, that's all the same. Bars. On the actual, not on these evals, but on the ones that you will write individually to all the students and their parents will get, there is at least one orange word in each, maybe not in each, but maybe each event, depends on what level it is, that they need to have mastered. To move up. Awesome. They need to have that. So for bars in this case, it is the pullover. All right, a pullover, it's an orange on there, and that in that case, when parents ask, like, well, what does my kid need to move up? The ones in orange are the ones that they need to absolutely have to move up. And that obviously for level 1, that's a pullover. This brings me into my next point about what it means to have something obtained. So working on means obviously that they can't do it. Do not mark it obtained if they only do it once magically.
Out of the 50 times.
Exactly, okay? Don't be like, oh my gosh, you did it that one time, and then go tell their mom that they need to move up to level 2. They need to have it 75% of the time 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah.
Because 1 week they could be really good, and the next week they could be like, oh, I forgot, or can't do it. And then they'll never be able to do it again for another 2 or 3 months. So that's really important. They need to have it 75% of the time for 2 weeks in a row. Hi, Carrie.
I like your shirt. I want a shirt like that.
Today. Oh, don't be. You're fine.
That's a great shirt.
All right, we're just talking about level 1 and level 2. You're going to be in my video.
I'm in the video now.
Unless you want to go through a recording. All right. So what I've said so far was, Lauren, can I see your pen real quick? She just needs to sign in. Make sure without giving it back to her. What I was saying is there will be one thing on each event per level, at least, that they need to move up to the next level. So just in case their parents ask, like, what are the main things that my child needs to work on? They're in orange. And that's on the actual eval instead of just the testing eval.
I think you should say this too, like if they have like that one thing from each thing mastered, like that doesn't mean they move up, right? Like
For the most part, no.
Yeah, like I'm saying, like, well, if they have like
But those are usually, they're the hardest things.
Yeah, I know, but like I'm saying, though, like if they have they have their pullover master, but they can't do casts or a straddle swing or like a lever, but they can do everything else on. Like I'm just saying, like, just because they have that one thing, I don't think that should be like, because you don't have everything else, but you have
Those
this
are
mastered.
the main things.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, because, you're right, because usually they are easier things, and then there's always one hardest thing, but you are right, like, because they get a pullover doesn't mean they know how to have straight legs on a straddle swing.
Right.
And all of that's really important, and I agree 100%. Tell them that too if parents always ask. Yes, obtained means 75% of the time, 2 weeks in a row. That's why we test for 2 weeks. And also, if you do not need to wait until testing or feel like it's a deadline to be able to move somebody up. If you feel like they're super close and their pullover's like this far away, but the session's ending, like, I feel like they should move up. No, don't do that. Keep them in level 1, and like even if they're in level 1 the next session for 2 weeks and they get their pullover 2 weeks in a row, move them up week 3. You know what, who cares? What's the point in waiting another 8 weeks if they're ready, and that was that one thing that they needed and they got it for 2 weeks in a row 75% of the time. That's fine, and that's what Kaylee said too. Kaylee okayed that.
That goes for Ninja too.
Ninja
for
as
when
well.
People watch that video.
Awesome. Yes. Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate it. So everything else on bars has already been there. I don't think I changed anything on bars, other than putting the pullover in orange. Beam, releve walks on high beam, which are important because a lot of children are afraid of even just walking on the high beam. And then some of them walk so fast and they're just like, yeah. So releve walks makes them go a little bit slower, have more control. Once again, control comes into the picture. Make sure they're looking straight ahead and that they're not looking at their feet. Obviously, that's a big one. And then dismount to stick. They can do a straddle jump, tuck jump, and then actually hold the stick for 3 full seconds instead of just getting impatient and then walking away. Bear walks is the same. Tuck jump is over the foam on the low beam. On the low beam, we do not have, it's just level 1. We don't have to have them do it on the high beam. A lever to T without the foam. Without the foam. Because I know they do it with the foam, and that's obviously training them a little bit, but I want them, because they're actually going to be doing handstands on the beam in level 2, that'll get them more ready for it. Yeah, exactly, and it's scary. And when kids do a lever with foam, they don't really realize that it's leading them up to go all the way down to the beam and do a handstand. And a lot of them try to rush through it as well. So try to tell them to take their time, I like to spot them through it, because then they'll understand it more.
Yeah, and it makes it like handstands easier in level 2, because I feel like 90% of my kids who I have in level 2, like their handstands are atrocious.
Yeah,
and it's because they don't get that basic training.
They don't get the basic training, absolutely.
Yeah. And it makes it way harder, to backtrack.
Absolutely.
And reteach.
And then not to mention, like, if you have half the kids who know how to do a lever to a T and the other half who don't, the ones who do know how to do it are not learning as well, because you're backtracking for the other kids that don't know how to do it. So once again, that foundation is being set in level 1, which is great. Floor backwards roll down wedge. Doesn't need to be on the ground, you know, just make sure that they know where to put their hands and actually tell them to use their hands instead of just going like this, you know? Which you see all the time. Every day, every child, you'd be like, no. So, and that's exactly. That's not one of the main things that they need, but it is good for them to learn actually how to do it, because in level 2, they will have to do it on the floor. So just getting them started to do it. I mean, we even do it in roll-in too. So just, you know, getting them to remember it and do it in level 1 is important. Handstand and cartwheel with straight legs, obviously both. And you guys know with the cartwheel, they switch the legs, and the handstand, they don't. And cartwheel, they go with their hands to the side, and handstand, they put their hands forward. So it's a lot for them to remember. So one of these stations at all time, well, both of these stations should be at every level 1, or every class of level 1. There should be both of these stations, because these are 2 of the main things that you need to move up. And you should be spotting at least one of them the entire time. If not, if you have 2 kids, then make sure one of them goes to this station and one of them goes to the station that you're spotting, so that you can spot, you know, that. But that's in a very rare situation where you only have 2. Yes, Corey?
So handstands, do you want them going all the way up, like feet touching, or can we do L? Because I find it easier to teach a level 1 an L, like an L handstand where they don't touch their feet, because they like do this, like they'll kick up and then they'll switch their feet.
Yeah.
And I just find it easier to do the L, that way they can practice like landing back in the lunge and then teaching toes touching in level 2.
What I've been doing is I've been teaching the L earlier in the weeks. And then once test, exactly, progression, once testing comes, then they can touch their toes, and then they will remember that they have to land in that lunge from kicking up to the L.
So like for testing, you like in order for it to be mastered, you want it to be all the way up.
I want it to be all the way up. Toes touch and then land back in your lunge, yes. Because obviously they have to do it on the beam.
Right.
And to master it on the beam in level 2, they have to get at least 3/4 of the way up, toes touch, come back down. So yes, good question though, I really like that. Forward roll, stand up, usually with no hands is what we like, but that's not generally too important. And just a bridge walk down the wedge, up against the wall. Teach them to walk their feet out. If they're walking their hands down, always look at your hands when you're doing a back bend. Because they don't get that, they go like this a lot. And I saw a girl go like this the other day, and I'm like, no, please don't do that.
X-nay on the back.
Exactly. So, and then that's gonna help their back flexibility get just a little bit better towards, you know, moving up to level 2. And just that little bit makes a difference. All the flexibility and strength on level 1 is the same. Does anybody have any questions on level 1 skills or how to spot? Probably not any of you guys. Anything on here or any other questions?
No. I wanted to clarify on the cartwheel and handstand what elements we're actually looking for, because when I get to, like, I'm not teaching level 1 or 2, but a lot of times I'll get the kids who've just moved up and I'll say, okay, we're gonna do and my vocabulary might be different. I'll say, like I say, tap handstand, and they'll be like, oh, what? And I'll be like, you know, come up and kick your feet together.
Yeah.
But like for a handstand, I want them to start in a lunge and they have to finish in a lunge. If
Yes.
they kick over, I make them do push-ups. So like in a level 1,
Yes.
do we want to have like part of the handstand skill is starting in a lunge maybe?
Oh, that should always be. For a cartwheel and a handstand, it should always be starting in a lunge, landing in a lunge, not going over, control.
Okay.
So basically like a normal handstand. Starting a lunge, arms by your ears the whole time, go down, kick up, and like I said, tap your toes.
Yeah.
And then come back down, land in the correct lunge. No switching your feet.
Okay.
Obviously, besides for a cartwheel, you have to switch feet.
Yeah.
But same thing for cartwheel. It needs to be, it doesn't have to be on a line, it doesn't have to be super straight. The legs, they don't have to be all the way to the ceiling, but like as high as they can, and they're not, you know,
It's a controlled skill.
It's a
not
controlled
just
skill, exactly.
cartwheeling themselves.
Yes, absolutely. Any other questions?
As far as the things in orange, you said that's on the actual.
That's on the actual, yes, because what I do personally is I don't decide to move them up until I'm writing all of their individual sheets. Because I feel obviously right here you don't do that. You're like, oh, this person already has all these masters. I mean, you can do that, but a lot of the times that's not the case. A lot of times I look at each individual ones that I'm going to give them where I write the comment, and then I will look to see like what's mastered, what's obtained, what's, you know, working on, and then I decide then.
Okay.
And so to see those there on the individual ones, I feel like that would help a lot more. If it would help, do you believe it would help you to like make these bold?
Probably just for my reference. So if just I need to remember something quickly, like, oh yeah, this is something really big,
More
or they
important.
ask me what is, because I'll get kids, I mean, that are actually really serious about gymnastics, and they
Yeah.
want to work hard, and they're like, what are the things I need to work on? And off the top of my head, if I'm coaching like 3 different levels,
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, what was that for you?
Right, okay.
So maybe during testing that might help. It's
Okay.
not what I'm gonna base it off of, obviously, but
Okay.
it might be
Alright.
something that does help.
Okay, cool. Good, I like that. Thank you for letting me know.
In reference to that, one of the things that we're trying to incorporate into the Ninja program that we find helpful is, like, as we're working with kids, if you see one kid and you're like, oh, I feel like you could try this on, like, by yourself on the lawn, like you feel comfortable that they're not gonna hurt themselves. And then you say, all right, this week I want you to do this skill. And like, the kids come back and they're like, they have the skill then. You know, like
Right,
it just
yeah.
gets so much better. And so giving, like, we just, at least the way that I'm trying to encourage people to work with that is to just keep up week by week. And I'm really bad at this myself, but trying to give like each child their individual
Homework.
skill that they like, their homework that they go home. And then you can tell the difference between the kids who do it and the kids who don't.
Yes,
But sometimes if you
absolutely.
don't give them that specific thing, they don't know what to work on, so they just end up like jumping on couches all week.
We are working on, Kaylee had brought it up to me that we might be working on some possible like homework cards.
Perfect, it's a
to
great
take,
idea.
yes, absolutely,
Give them
to give the kids, because parents always ask like, my child is working on this pullover, like what can we do at home to help? And it's, you know, like, you know,
I like
trying
different
to,
exercises, but I would never, I'm like, I don't agree with kids doing home gymnastics.
and that's what,
I'm sometimes
yes,
hesitant
so
with
that's
that,
what Anna
depending on the
Sophia said
skill.
too, because when we brought this up, when I met with Anna and Nikki, Anna said, what my coach always told me was no gymnastics at home. And whenever I talk to a parent personally, when they ask what can I do, especially if they're working on their kickover, I say, you know, stretch, and I say, I'm talking to the parent, if you are comfortable with this. I personally, you know, used to do a handstand and have my feet land on the couch and then kick over.
Yeah.
If they're comfortable with it, it's their house. I mean, it's their child that they want to move up and improve.
The only problem with
It's
that
at
is
their
that
discretion.
they could be teaching wrong form, or like, bend your arms here, do this, and then they die. You know what I'm saying?
Not really that they die, but like you know what I'm saying, like you know, but like you know what I'm saying, they could be like, and then they could say, I
Yeah,
have no idea
but
what I'm
I
talking
mean, like
about.
I hate to say it, but that's not our problem.
Yeah,
because
you're right.
we're not spotting them, and all we said was at your discretion. If you are
I
comfortable.
definitely put that in, because
Yeah.
I mean, there's kids that go home, do it on their bed or something, and their parents are
Exactly.
like, whoa, where did that come from? Or who
No,
told you
I
to
do
do
not
that?
tell any
Yeah.
of my kids to go home. I tell the parents,
Yeah.
like, if they ask me what they can do,
Yeah.
then I will tell them how they can work on it at home. I do not tell them, like, oh yeah, you know, the back bend is so close. Have her practice in the grass a couple
Right,
times.
yeah,
You know,
right.
that's
Probably have her
soft,
laying on her
right?
face.
Exactly. No.
Yeah.
I do not do it unless they ask me
Mm-hmm.
how they can help, and I say, at your discretion, if you're comfortable, then have them do this,
Mm-hmm.
so that they know, like, I'm not forcing your child to do this. If you're okay with it, then your child may do that if you would like.
I'm pretty comfortable saying I do not recommend working.
Yeah.
Okay, or that, yeah, or you can say I do not recommend doing
And levels
gymnastics at
too that you
home.
work with are definitely
Well,
like,
yeah.
those are skills you don't
One of
want
my
to do.
kids, you know, Addie Grozier, Collins.
Oh yeah,
Sister.
yeah.
So they,
Yeah, that's
when she was really close to getting her back handspring, she came to me and she was so excited, and even her mom was excited. We just got a backyard trampoline, and I went, oh. And I hate trampolines, just like period, but home trampolines. And they saw my face and they were like, oh, is that not a good
yeah.
thing? I was like, well, they're really dangerous. And
Yeah.
since you're I was like, remember how like sometimes you sit back and sometimes you lean forward and sometimes you're not getting over and sometimes you do? And she's like, yeah. And I said, maybe don't practice back handspring. Practice your jumping,
Yes.
whatever.
Yeah.
But she was like, oh, and her mom was like, oh, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah,
They didn't
and most
even-
importantly, yeah, you're right, because that's what usually when parents ask me how they can help or get their child to do something, I immediately think level 1 and level 2. So you're right. If it's like
Yeah,
something
the
that's a
higher
higher level, I would not recommend
Yeah.
doing that, especially with if your if your parent was like a previous gymnastics coach, maybe.
Aren't they all?
Yeah. Yeah. It's exactly right. No, so for like lower levels, I would